Tropical storm Helene has formed in the northwest Caribbean, and it is forecast to become a major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. I'll have all the newest information for you and the forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back at Meteo Mundo. Good to see you on a Tuesday. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, I've got all the newest information on Tropical Storm Helene. We'll take a look at what's currently happening right now in the Northwest Caribbean. Still forecast to become a major hurricane in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. The impacts are going to be widespread felt, so we'll talk about those. All the newest model data, we'll get into all of that. We've had some other impactful weather across the Caribbean today. We'll take a look at that, and of course, what else is happening tropically as well. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments section below what's been happening in your area, what the weather has been like. Of course, an important video. If you have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop that in the comments section below. Hopefully, we're going to cover a lot of those questions in this video. As we get started, I do have a programming note here at Meteo Mundo. I'm going to be live tomorrow night for you guys. We'll be doing a live stream. I'll be coming on. We're going to be taking your questions, just having a chat, looking at what's happening with Helene currently and what that forecast is for Thursday. So join me tomorrow night. That's Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is also Atlantic Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. We're going to do a live stream. We're going to get prepared because Thursday is going to be a very impactful day for portions of the Gulf Coast, especially a lot of Florida. So make sure you're a subscriber, make sure you have the notifications on, and then join me for the live stream tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I will also be doing an update video tomorrow. It'll be coming out a little bit earlier, more than likely in the early afternoon, and then we'll do the live stream starting at 8 o'clock. As I mentioned, we now have the 8th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical Storm Helene formed earlier today in the Northwest Caribbean. So let's get into what's happening with Helene right now. You're looking at our enhanced satellite imagery. You're looking at the live lightning data. The numbers that you see are wind gusts in miles an hour. I did wait to record this until after the 5 o'clock advisory. So first of all, let's see what's been happening with Helene structurally for today. Going to switch over to the visible satellite imagery here. Still has been a little bit ragged at times on the western side of the storm. We had multiple low-level vortices trying to develop. You can see some of those on this high-resolution visible satellite imagery. It does look like we're beginning to consolidate into one true low-level center under that central dense overcast. Now, the reason why the western edge of the storm was struggling a little bit for today, when I swing over to the water vapor imagery, do you see this red over the Yucatan? That's actually an upper level trough with some drier air. That's what you see. The red is the dry air, the greens and the blues are the moisture laden air. So we did have some drier air trying to kind of sneak into the western side of the storm, but that upper level trough is retrograding off towards the west. The influence will basically go away tonight, and you can even see that the moisture field is beginning to broaden out on the western side. So it does look like Helene will continue to slowly develop, at least in the short term, and then all systems are go for it to fully get going as it gets into the eastern side of the Atlantic here, or excuse me, the eastern side of the Gulf of Mexico as we get into later tomorrow. The shorter term forecast is now a little bit farther off towards the west, and that's actually the influence of that upper level trough. So I want you to notice that in the shorter term, we do have Helene getting closer to the northern and eastern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, closer to Cancun and Cozumel rather than the western tip of Cuba. And so we'll talk about how that's going to influence things here coming up as well. Let's look at the advisory, friends. This is the 5 o'clock advisory, and I'm going to be referencing this a lot, but just as far as the vitals of Helene, if you will. Winds are 50 miles an hour. It's moving west-northwest at 12. Pressure's down to 995 millibars. That means it's located 155 miles to the east-southeast of Cozumel, Mexico, or 150 miles to the south of the western tip of Cuba. Look, there's a lot to talk about as far as watches and warnings go, but talking about the area here in the Northwest Caribbean, we do have a hurricane warning in effect from Cabo Cotoche to Tulum, Mexico. We also have a hurricane watch for the Cuban province of Pinar del Rio. We then have a tropical storm warning in effect for Rio Lagartos to Tulum and the Cuban provinces of Artisma, Pinar del Rio, and the Isle of Youth. The tropical storm warning that was in effect for Grand Cayman has been lifted. And again, there's a ton of watches and warnings for Florida that we will get into coming up here as we look at the track. But just in the shorter term, obviously, we're starting to see some fresher winds. We had some near 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts in Grand Cayman, 40-mile-an-hour wind gust here off of the Cuban coastline. We do have a buoy that's right in the track and basically near the center of where Helene is trying to form, and then had some winds from time to time in that 35-mile-an-hour range. Heavy rainfall is going to really be the big story in the Northwest Caribbean through the Yucatan and Yucatan Channel. We've had some good rain in portions of Jamaica. It hasn't been horribly flooding kinds of rains, but just some really solid rains. I have some video out of Spanish Town to show you there. This is from Kimmy G. And many of my Jamaican friends have dropped in the comment section below that the rain overall has been very beneficial. It's cooled things down. It's really helped things out. And again, there's been some isolated areas of low-level flooding from time to time, but generally speaking, the island has been able to handle the kind of rain that we've seen. And there'll be some more rain for Jamaica at least through this evening, and then we start to see Helene move away. So I'm not concerned about flooding there. I am more concerned about flooding for Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, Cayman Brac, portions of Cuba, portions of the Yucatan Peninsula as well. But again, this track would keep some of the heavier rain just to the east. Now, in the short term, we're going to have a tropical storm getting stronger here. Winds up to 60 to 65 as we get into tonight and overnight. And I want you to notice, friends, that just as it's exiting the Yucatan Channel and into the southeast Gulf of Mexico, it is forecast to become a hurricane. So very shortly after moving just north and east of Cancun, it is forecast to become a hurricane. The western cone of uncertainty is over the tip of the Yucatan. So we actually could have landfall over Cancun. More than likely, it's going to stay just offshore. But look, that center line is less than 30 miles from Cancun. So it's going to be a close brush with a stronger tropical storm. So tropical storm conditions are very likely for Cancun and Cozumel, maybe as far south as the Tulum area. Then we take a look at the rest of the track, okay? Now, there's a couple of things to talk about here, and I'm going to look at the model data coming up in just a minute. First of all, in the short term, the track has nudged a little bit farther north and west. But I do want you to notice that overall, the track for the Hurricane Center hasn't really changed. So even though it's going to be farther west in the short term, it nudges back east, and I'm going to tell you why coming up here in just a minute. But when we're looking at a storm that could reach Category 3 strength, even as far south, if you will, off of the Bradenton-Sarasota coastline. So it's forecast to become a major hurricane a little bit farther south than what it was yesterday. And friends, it is going to be a very large storm. Helene, just in sheer size, is going to be a storm where the impacts are going to be felt in many, many areas. As we get into the forecast, I really appreciate you guys liking this video. Thank you to all of our new subscribers who have found the channel in the recent days. Appreciate you hitting that subscribe button right now. Again, thank you for sharing this with your family and friends, and thanks for those who have found ways to support me here at the channel via our memberships, just 99 cents a month, via the Super Thanks. You can also find links to the PayPal and the Venmo in the descriptions below, and I appreciate those who have found those links as well. Really appreciate the support for those of you who would like to support the channel in that regard. So let's now get into the forecast. We're going to take a look at the models, and we're going to start here with the GFS. Going to load this up. And I also want to bring on these contours again, because this is going to be a big reason why the storm is going to track the way it is. And then we're going to talk about the darn sheer size of this thing. This thing is going to be huge. But the first thing I want to talk about is how this is going to track and what the models are saying. Again, in the very short term, we could see this clipping the northeast tip of the Yucatan, okay, because of the influence of that upper level trough. Now, down the road, we have this cutoff low moving in the Mississippi River Valley. We have an area of high pressure off the southeast United States in the western Atlantic. The lane for Helene to go through is going to be in between those two large-scale features, okay? The biggest thing is that the models the last 24 hours have shifted this upper level low slightly east, and it has to go east of that upper level low. So despite the fact that it might enter the Gulf of Mexico west of where we thought it was going to 24 hours ago, because this feature is east, Helene is going to have to nudge back east, and so overall, The net impact on potential landfall areas is 0. We've had a net 0, even though it's going to start farther west, it should curve back east. And again, you're looking at a centerline track somewhere in the eastern panhandle to the Big Bend area here. And you can see that on the GFS model. It rides up. It's a little bit closer to the Big Bend here, but you can see that coming in. Timing is still going to be more than likely sometime later on Thursday. This is 8 o'clock. Potentially, Helene could be slowing up just a little bit, but a very rapid forward speed is expected late Wednesday into Thursday. It's got to cover a lot of ground in the Gulf of Mexico to actually make landfall even late on Thursday, but that is still the forecast from the National Hurricane Center, okay? So again, it has to go between this upper level low, this cutoff low, in this area of high pressure. So there's not a lot of wiggle room, especially for it to go farther west. If anything, there would be more of a nudge to the east. But again, it can't go too far east because of that area of high pressure. But look, I'm telling you right now, if you live up and down the west coast of Florida, significant impacts are expected. Maybe you don't get the strongest winds, but there's a big time storm surge that is forecast for these areas to go along with a tornado threat and some very heavy rainfall as well. So let's bring back up the advisory, because those are some of the things that I want to mention, because look, these watches and warnings are going to change with almost every advisory. So we just have to kind of keep up to date with this. A hurricane warning is now in effect from Anclote River to Mexico Beach, Florida. We have a hurricane watch from Inglewood to Anclote River, including Tampa Bay. Tropical storm warning for the dry Tortugas, the lower and the middle Florida Keys. Flamingo to Anclote River, including Tampa Bay. West of Mexico Beach to Walton Bay County line. Then we have a tropical storm watch for Lake Okeechobee, and then for Palm Beach, Marion County, which, by the way, is on the eastern side of the state of Florida, northward to the Savannah River. All right, so you've got just a ton of stuff coming up here, and it looks like my computer hasn't picked up all of those newest watches and warnings, but obviously it's going to be a hugely impactful storm. The other thing I want to talk about here is these rings. This is the forecast tropical storm force winds, okay? Look how widespread this is forecast to be. As it becomes a major hurricane, and probably the easiest thing is just to bring back on this model actually, as this becomes a major hurricane, guys, it is forecast to be in the 90th percentile in size, meaning it's going to be top 10 percentile in actual size of a major hurricane. So that means basically all of the peninsula of Florida, portions of the Bahamas, and then a large area of the southeast United States are going to feel the impacts from an exceptionally large hurricane. Okay, again, maybe not the strongest wind impacts, but we are talking about big time storm surge, we're talking about big time rainfall, we're talking about the opportunity for some tornadic storms as well. Let's get into the winds. I'm going to bring those up for you right now. Take a look at these low level winds. Give me just 1 second to loop everything up. And now we're going to look at what the winds are looking like from the newest model data as well. Okay. So again, let me just take those surface contours off. There we go. Okay. So we can see, again, on the track here, a storm that's kind of riding up the center of the western line. None of the models are really too far off of that. Just to show you guys, all the tropical spaghetti plot models are well within this area from Port St. Joe towards Cedar Key. So again, everything is kind of within this cone of uncertainty, which is exactly why the Hurricane Center has basically painted that on. So now we're talking about intensity. And again, forecast to become a major hurricane. Now the models, they've bobbled a little bit back and forth on the actual intensity, partly because of the initial conditions, right? Do we get a storm that's developed rapidly? So far we haven't. That doesn't mean that we can't see a system that really, really rapidly intensifies here. Now, again, we're not seeing, at least on the GFS, a storm that would be Cat 3 strength here, okay? But that's what the official forecast is, so we'll see how it bombs out if it does. If we take a look at the wind gusts, so let's switch over to wind gusts and loop this up. you're going to see, and the reason why I'm showing you this, that we're going to have tropical storm force wind gusts well into the majority of the peninsula of Florida. And as a matter of fact, most of Florida right now, even inland, are under at least tropical storm warnings, okay? That's what we expect to see here. And again, timing of this, right? Again, this is tomorrow. This is Wednesday. It's right here. And it's going to beeline it towards the eastern panhandle or the Big Bend. But out here on the western side, you're getting some winds at least gusting to 110 on the models. But again, the official forecast from the Hurricane Center actually has wind gusts up to nearly 140, all right? So I'll show you some of the other tropical models that are a little bit stronger than this one. But just to show you again, there's still some play. You know, potentially we could avoid having a major hurricane, but this is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center. And quite honestly, looking at things overall, I expect it to get very close, more than likely, if it doesn't get there. But there's a high probability that we do end up having a major hurricane. This is the HRRR model, the High Resolution Rapid Refresh, showing you this mainly to look at the storms in the Bahamas and Florida, okay? So for our friends in the central and the northwest Bahamas, squalls coming in, good tropical downpours, some heavy rain possible. This will start tomorrow. This will last throughout our Thursday as well. So for Freeport, Lucaya, Walker's Key, Abaco, Nassau, Eleuthera, Bimini, Cat Island, Andros, even back down towards Exuma, we're gonna see some fast moving squalls moving to north to south. Watch out for the opportunity for some water spouts here in the central and the northwest Bahamas as well. There's going to be a tornado threat more than likely with these storms moving up through the peninsula of Florida to go along with some exceptionally heavy rain as well. And you can see these feeder bands moving in. So we're going to have squally weather through Florida. We're going to have a huge storm surge, which we're going to get into on the western coastline, and the opportunity again for some tornadic cells. So this is what this high resolution model, I just wanted to show you. And again, you can just see those feeder bands moving right through the state, even to the eastern side. Look, the East Coast, we could have some water spouts developing there as well. The storm surge is going to be a huge issue on the western side. Rainfall totals are going to be exceptional for this as well. Again, when we look at these tropical models, now we don't have as many, if any, at Cat 5 strength, okay? A couple at Cat 4, the majority are clustered Cat 2, Cat 3. So anywhere from about 100-mile-an-hour winds to 115 plus. 111 is a Category 3, that makes it a major hurricane. Honestly, appreciably, 105, 110, 115 doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference. We're still going to have some catastrophic wind damage there, okay? So that's more than likely how it's going to play out. When we look at the European model, all of that was the GFS that I showed you. Here's the European model. Again, slowed down, deterministic. It also has it brushing the northeast tip of the Yucatan. Again, potentially scraping places like Cozumel and Cancun. And then we start to see it go back to the east. The European model also has this cutoff low slightly east than yesterday. So that means its landfall has not changed. It is forecast to make landfall again very close to the Big Bend or the eastern sides of the Panhandle of Florida, very late on Thursday evening, more than likely on the European model after sunset. This is the HWRF model. This is Thursday night moving in. And again, I've showed you these from yesterday where they were basically all Cat 5, HMON, HWRF, HAFS A. They're all still exceptionally strong storms, slightly higher pressures, which means slightly weaker, but still catastrophic major hurricanes forecast from the HWRF. This is the HAFS A model. This is again basically about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock on Thursday night. It's slightly east, but it's still in that Big Bend area there, just east of Apalachicola Bay towards Cross City. And then this is the HMON model. It's slightly inland here, but the last one was a little bit offshore. So I just wanted to show you where it moved in. Notice a very tight cluster of where the landfall is going to be in these storms, okay? So the models are honing in on a fairly narrow area. The intensity, I think, is still the biggest question mark out of this storm. This is going to be a big problem. I can't stress enough the amount of water that Helene could push into the west coast of Florida. Friends, look at some of these storm surge forecasts, okay? We'll start up north, Mexico Beach to Indian Pass, 1 to 3 feet. But then you get just east of Indian Pass, and it's 5 to 10 inches 5 to 10, I wish it was inches, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge possible as you get towards the western side of Apalachicola Bay, then all the way down to Chassahowiska, which is going to include Cedar Key, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, okay? If you live in flood-prone areas, if you live in evacuation zones, and you've been ordered to evacuate, please heed those local advisories. Get out of Dodge. It's not worth it. 10 to 15 feet, story and a half foot of storm surge could be coming into some of these areas. It's not much better when you go farther off to the south. You're still looking at 6 to 10 towards Anclote River. Then for Tampa Bay, it's 5 to 8 feet. 5 to 8 foot storm surge for all of Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Newport Richey, Sarasota, Bradenton, down towards Inglewood. You get 3 to 5 feet as you get down to Charlotte Harbor and Fort Myers, and then 2 to 4 feet all the way down towards the Keys. It's 1 to 3 foot there and 1 to 3 feet for the dry Tortugas. So again, the impacts of Helene, very widespread, but very high. These storm surges are troublesome. All right, for the west coast of Florida. If you live in these areas and you're told to evacuate, I really hope that you take that advice and you do. Let's talk about the rainfall. Again, those could be exceptional as well. This is the European model rainfall forecast over the next 7 days. Now, we're going to have some problems inland in the southeast United States as well, because Helene will move quickly inland, but then kind of get caught up in that cutoff low. It could sit in a couple of spots of the southeast United States for a while, but you can see the widespread heavier rain that is forecast here from Grand Cayman on to the western tip of Cuba, the Yucatan, then right up the west coast of Florida, and then inland as well. So here are some of the rain impacts expected out of Helene. 4 to 8 inches, locally up to a foot of rain for the western portions of Cuba and the Cayman Islands. For Jamaica, 2 to 4 inches, locally higher, but again, we've been able to handle most of that rain, more than likely tonight, early through tomorrow morning, not expecting a lot of areas of flooding. For the eastern Yucatan, that does include Cancun, Cozumel, Tulum, 4 to 6 inches of rain, locally up to 8 inches, so that would be 100 to 200 millimeters of rain. For the southeast United States, it's 4 to 8 inches, locally up to 12 inches, with flash and urban flooding and river flooding as well. And obviously along the coast, the storm surge would be a big issue. Waves are going to be dramatically high as well. Double-digit waves are forecast to come in here. We'll let this loop one more time for you guys. We'll pick it up starting here. You can see through the Yucatan Channel, double-digit wave heights, and then just that follows. Again, Helene is top 10% in size forecast for a major hurricane. The expansive wind fields, the expansive storm surge, just everything that it's going to bring. When we look at the GFS model as far as rainfall goes, and there's a couple of other things I want to show you guys here as well before we move on. Again, anywhere that you see these oranges to yellows is more than 8 inches of rain. So you get towards Grand Cayman and just west of there, we have that higher amount. But again, I think at least 8 inches is possible. Again, towards Cancun and Cozumel, it's going to be close, right? We've got some pockets of very heavy rain, just depending on where this circulates and where this goes. And then right up the gut, right up the path, exceptionally high rainfall totals here. More than a foot of rain expected in a couple of spots. There could still be some flooding, and the GFS is probably underdoing the rain here in central Florida. But again, this comes with a tornado threat, and then you get inland, and as the storm dies out in north side of Georgia towards Atlanta, portions of South and North Carolina, and just through the Tennessee Valley, portions of the mid-Atlantic, just very, very wet weather to go along with this. So flooding, even inland, is going to be a big concern as well. The other thing I wanted to show you guys before we moved on were these wind vectors. I showed you this yesterday, and it might take just 1 second to fully loop this up because this is something that I just reminded myself I wanted to show you guys. This is going to show us the actual wind direction of Helene. And the problem that I want to show for the western coast of Florida is that we're going to have an onshore wind eventually. The winds are going to be coming out of the southwest, which for places like Charlotte Harbor and especially Tampa Bay, it's no good. It's going to be water that's pushed right up into the upper bays. Again, it's the same situation as yesterday, but if you didn't watch yesterday's video, again, as Helene moves up, the winds will be kind of out of the southeast to due south, but then behind Helene, as it moves north, now all of the winds turn south to southwest. okay? And they're gonna come right up Tampa Bay and right up any other flood-prone areas of the west coast of Florida. Again, Cedar Key would be a big issue as well. I can show you again the numbers here. So it's not just the fact that the wind direction is going to be that way, but these are wind speeds behind the storm that are still over 50 miles an hour. So can you imagine having, and let me get this grid spacing a little bit less for you guys. That way, Rusty. There we go. Might be a little bit easier to see. You're going to have winds that are still going to be 50, 60 miles an hour behind this storm, pushing the water up. But even ahead of it, obviously, there's still enough of a south to southwest component to have some massive storm surge. So it's just a horrible wind direction for the entire west coast. Anywhere along the center path and east of the center of circulation, we're going to have these issues. All right. So let me loop this up one time for you guys. This is why I know I'm harping on this a lot, but this is very important because we're going to have the wind threat. We're going to have some big time problems here, but a lot of the west coast of Florida is going to see some major water inundation. Okay. So that's going to be a big problem. Let me also do this real quick. And again, we're just going to take our time here. I'm going to bring on, just so everyone can see real quick, and it's going to take a second to load up, which is fine. But just to show everyone, I'm going to be bringing on all of the watches and warnings that are currently in effect. And it'll take a second to fully load on here. So we'll just be patient. And again, if you haven't liked the video so far, thank you for doing so. If you haven't subscribed to Meteo Mundo, thank you for doing so as well. I hope this doesn't take too long. But I wanted to just show everyone because I have the ability, and it takes a lot to bring all of this on. And here it comes. All of the watches and warnings and everything that's in play for Florida right now. So even towards the Orlando area here, just to show you, you've got yourself a tropical storm warning. Even up towards Jacksonville, it's a tropical storm watch. Again, down in Miami, special marine warnings. There's all your tropical storm warnings here. And then, of course, they become hurricane warnings, storm surge warnings, closer to places like Perry and Cross City and Cedar Key. Okay, all the way up towards Tallahassee, which is currently under a hurricane warning as well. First of all, again, please check in with your local government, your local officials for all the newest information. But I just wanted to show you guys how expansive all of the tropical storm watches, warnings, flood watches and warnings, storm surge watches and warnings are for all of Florida. It's a big time problem. So that's the latest on Helene, okay? I think we've gone over all of it. Again, I'll have a new update tomorrow afternoon, and then we're going to be going live at 8 o'clock on Wednesday for what's going to be happening as we get into our Wednesday night and into our Thursday. So hopefully you guys will have an opportunity to join me for that as well. Okay. I do want to obviously talk about the rest of what's been happening in the Caribbean for today. We've had some nice moisture develop over the Lesser Antilles. We've had some heavy rain. We have more active flood watches in effect for Barbados for today. We've had a severe thunderstorm watches in effect for those areas. Some of that has passed over Martinique, St. Lucia and the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So some decent downpours in these areas, trying to get a couple of showers to develop in Grenada and Trinidad and Tobago as well. If you're catching some of that rain, you let me know. It's a little bit spottier, but we've had a few showers as well over places like Guadeloupe, Antigua, Barbuda, trying to get an isolated shower or storm in those areas. A little bit of gusty winds as well. And again, had Dennis Shirts from the Guadeloupe area send me this photo. Take a look at that. That's a gorgeous thunderstorm. Look at that anvil trying to develop there in the offshore waters. What a classic looking shot there from Guadeloupe. Dennis, I appreciate you sending me that photo. That's an excellent shot. And it just shows you again how kind of isolated some of these storms can be, where you can have pockets of really heavy rain in a couple of spots and other areas are just absolutely baking at the hour with no threat for any shower activity. Going to bring on the visible satellite imagery here just so you can see some of those brighter white cloud tops, some of that heavier rain right over Barbados. Again, we lose the satellite imagery here, the viz, late in the day, but there you go. Trying to get a few showers and storms to pop up over the U.S. and British Virgin Islands as well. Again, my friends in these areas have mentioned how hot it's been. We had more excessive heat warnings for today. We've had some heat advisories. So these showers and storms are welcomed. Watch out for some of the heavier rain. We've had some of that develop over interior portions of Puerto Rico for today towards Uti Alto and Cuamo. Kind of trying to drift off towards the south. San Juan, Lokai has been relatively dry for today. A couple of storms on the eastern sides of the Dominican Republic. These are racing off towards the west. So they developed towards Punta Cana, La Romana, and then they've worked their way to the north side, just north of Santo Domingo, trying to get in some of the higher elevations there. It's actually been a little bit quieter today over the Haiti side. Port-au-Prince, Lokai have been relatively quiet. Then again, we move into what's happening right now with what's going on with Helene. Some of these showers and storms have obviously been able to propagate south and west back towards Honduras and Nicaragua and portions of Costa Rica and Panama. Nice storms over the Roatan area at the hour as well. And again, these spots will see the better opportunity for some more expansive rain. The western side of Helene is still going to be more cut off, but we're going to get some of this to drift into coastal Guatemala, coastal Belize, and especially as you get into Quintana Roo, more than likely that's the spots that's going to be the really heavy rain. Now, for my friends in the Bahamas, again, isolated showers and storms for today. We've had some of that over New Providence and Andros, back down towards Exuma and Cat Island there, Long Island as well. Heavy rain, spotty showers and storms, but more of this will be, of course, lifting northward, and it's going to get wetter, it's going to get stormier, it's going to get squallier there as well. Back over to the GFS. I'm going to take this and extend it out deeper into time, as they say. Just give me 1 second to do that. We'll go out the majority of the week. I want you to notice I haven't really highlighted the other area yet. Still a high chance that this becomes Isaac. But again, this is going to be lifting fairly quickly north in latitude. So at this point in time, it's forecast to say a fish storm. My friends in the Lesser Antilles and the Virgin Islands of Puerto Rico, I'm going to keep a close eye on this one. But as long as this cooperates, stays on the projected path, both from the Hurricane Center's area of development and what the GFS model is showing you, this should begin to recurve well north and east of the Lesser Antilles, and no big concern there. So just to show you again, for the Bahamas here, in the short term, that we're going to have some of that squally weather begin to move in throughout the day tomorrow and then into Thursday as well. Farther north and west that you live across the island chain, better opportunity for some of those heavier storms and some of that squallier weather. For the rest of the area, again, in the short term, as Helene pulls away, it's going to dry things out a bit for the Yucatan and for most of Central America, the remnants of John, bringing some heavier rain towards Acapulco, but more than likely not impacting our area in general. We're going to continue to see some tropical moisture march in from east to west with our easterlies. So scattered downpours are expected for the Lesser Antilles. Going to try and get some rain for the ABC Islands. You can see some of that moisture trying to come back in. Nothing that's going to be organized tropically in nature, but again, rain chances should be decent, especially down in the Windward Islands, and then trying to get some redeveloping showers and storms over the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, portion of the Leeward Islands as well, Antigua, Barbuda, decent opportunities the next few days. Nothing, as I said, that's going to be so concentrated that we really have to focus on it, but passing showers to try and cool things off. And obviously, the big story is what's going to be happening with Helene and as it moves into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So again, friends, tomorrow night, or if you're viewing this on Wednesday, later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, I'm going to be live. We're just going to be talking about what's going on with Helene, taking your questions. Please join me then, have the notifications on. We're going to talk about that and talk about our coverage for Thursday as well. And again, I appreciate you guys following me across all of social media here, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video like Dennis did today, like Kimmy sent me that video out of Spanish Town, Jamaica, mymediamundo@gmail.com. Again, friends, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing. If you're in the path of Helene, please take this storm very seriously. I'll be back tomorrow with another update. Until then, you stay safe, have a good one, and I'll see you soon right here at Meteo Mundo.